It's time to pull those belts tight, race fans. The front stretch is coming at you, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Now, here's Dan Taylor and Dirk Houston.
Hi, Dave Spain with MAV TV, which is your television destination if you're looking for motorsports. Radio, you found it. You're listening to The Front Stretch.
Well, good morning to you, race fans, and welcome to The Front Stretch, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs, online at joeskarting.com. By the way, big news coming for Joe's Karting next weekend. You'll have to make sure and tune in turn 1 or 2. Haven't quite figured out exactly when, but Buddy Ray Jones, operation manager at Joe's Karting, is going to join us and give us the lowdown on exactly what the heck Joe's Karting has going on now. And if you know Buddy Ray, you know that there's no way you're going to guess what he's got going on, because that guy will pull a good idea out of any crevice and he'll fly with it and make it work. So big news coming out of Joe's Karting.
But he will have the information on how you can order a T-shirt.
Absolutely. All right, today's show, coming up in turn 1, we're going to talk about some NASCAR news and notes. We'll talk about a couple of fundraisers, as well as in turn 2, Crystal Robinson, is going to join us in turn 2 to talk about the fundraiser for Lynne Mcneal, who is the wife of hobby stock driver Jesse Mcneal. Make sure you turn in turn 2 for that. Tune in turn 2 for that. And then in turns 3 and 4, the Kosiski Auto Parts Legends of the Dirt Series.
How about instead of tuning in for turn 2, why don't they just stay tuned in through turn 1, into turn 2, into turn 3, and turn 4?
That's a good idea. All hour long, just hang out with us.
That's why I'm here.
Unfortunately, we have to start today off with some sad news. Monday, earlier this week, one of the local racers passed away suddenly in his sleep, and that was the 24R stock car driver of Don Moore, who had been racing for over 30 years in the stock car division. Started out in the Pro-Ams at Sunset Speedway, racing his old Camaro body style, and then migrated over to I-80.
Yeah, he actually started with a Chevelle, I remember, and then migrated over like just about everybody and went to the Camaros, and has run the Camaro up to just a couple years ago when he went ahead and took the weight break that they were given with the stock cars and built a stock car and the different engine and stuff in those. So, but Don was very well liked at the track as an official, and having worked with him in that capacity, just like every other racer, we had words every now and then, but the next week it was all forgotten and you started over. And,
he's such a nice guy, and I dealt with him and his brother Ron and the whole family, the whole crew over there that was in that 24 pit, and I believe his twin brother, Ronald, right?
Correct.
Good guys. And we had crosswords one time, and the next night we met up at Eagle and patched it up, and we were friends. And he was always just a nice guy. And he was, to me, he was the epitome of a dirt racer. He didn't have much money, but he had his car, he had tires, he had his crew. It was a family thing. And he went out there and had fun. And sometimes he got mad at his competitors, but for the most part, it was out there to have a good time.
And if you were pitted next to him and you needed some assistance, he was always there to lend a hand, if he had the time and, wasn't wrenching on his own car. Was usually pretty good at taking his car home in one piece for all the times I can remember seeing him run.
Yeah.
But he's going to be missed, so everything's already happened. He was laid to rest here. Was supposed to be laid to rest Friday. So we're pre-recording, as always, so it just happens that we don't get to do our show on Wednesday or something where we can get the word out on something like this. So when you do say your prayers today, go ahead and throw Ron and the rest of the Moore family in those, and keep them in your thoughts. And maybe when you see him at the racetrack this summer, you can give personal condolences.
Absolutely. Gone at 57 years old, so way too soon. Should have had another 30 years. But, absolutely. You see Ron and the rest of the family out at the dirt track, give them a little bit of love, because they're certainly going to need it. All right, for today's show, we got a little bit of a fundraiser coming up for the Gambler 500, right?
Well, it's not actually for the Gambler 500, but our friend Joel Wilgers, who runs the Gambler 500 here in Nebraska, has got a deal going here today on February 4th in Philly, Nebraska, which is down Beatrice Way. The Philly Volunteer Fire Department annual pancake feed. It's a Goodwill donation, but if you're down in that neck of the woods and can get a chance to run over there, it starts at 11 o'clock in the morning. I've been looking at their Facebook post, and they don't have a location, so I'm going to guess it's at the fire department is where I think it would be. They'll have the truck sitting outside so the kids can check out the trucks and whatnot, go down and eat a few pancakes and some sausage, and leave a $10 bill, and it's obviously something. If you're up here in Omaha, it's an 80-mile drive down that direction. So, but if you're down there in the Beatrice area, and I know we've got listeners down there because they call in and tell us that they're listening, when we're giving stuff away. So run over and help support that. It's always a good deal. You never know when you might need those people.
Absolutely. All right, for the rest of Turn 1, we're going to talk a little bit of NASCAR news. There's been, as the speed weeks are starting to pick up and as some things are starting to the engines are starting to get heated up for the Daytona 500. We're seeing a little bit more news that is trickling out of NASCAR, and so we'll cover a couple of those topics. Miller Coors, the beer responsible for the Coors Light Pull Award, has officially notified NASCAR that they would not be renewing their sponsorship with the sanctioning body, but they will continue their sponsorship of Penske, which I believe is a 11-race deal with the 2 machine and a little bit on the 22. So apparently Miller Coors and NASCAR not able to come to an agreement to renew that Coors Light pole sponsor deal. So I guess they were in talks quite a bit up until last Sunday night when the deal finally fell apart and both parties walked away from the agreement. It's unfortunate, and we're hearing this more and more, and automatically people are going to say, well, that's a sign of the times that NASCAR is just not the powerhouse it used to be. And absolutely, but I would venture to say that Miller Coors isn't the powerhouse that it used to be. They used to be 2 separate companies, and there used to be 30, 40 different type of beer on the beer shelves. Now there's well over 1,000 to 1,500. There's beer. The craft beer.
All the craft beers.
The craft beer has ate into these guys' profit margins so much that like anything else in the world, it's so diluted. Where there used to be 10 options for TV stations, there's now 400. And so the same amount of people are just watching less, but the same amount total.
Well, and I'm still, I think that the Miller Coors Group, I believe, is now owned by Europe, a European company, if I'm not mistaken. So that's probably, got a little bit to do with it. But, anymore with what it costs, the umpteen $1 million it costs to run these sports teams, and if you're sponsoring a team, to be sponsoring, kind of the race series type deal on top of that can be a bit much.
Yeah.
But.
And, there may have been an issue with, I don't think many of this young youth movement that's coming in, I don't think any of them are under 21. Most of them are 23, 24, 25. Like Kyle Larson, Eric Jones.
Eric Jones isn't old enough yet.
So my point is, maybe there's a little bit of an issue with them sponsoring the pole award that an underage kid could win, and so maybe they were trying to pivot to something else, and it just never worked out.
For years, when they were running conjunction races with the IRL, like with the Truck Series, you had to be 18 to race because Marlboro was such a big sponsor of the IRL race, and they were always the headline for the weekend. And you couldn't go ahead and run. If you were underage and couldn't buy the product, they wouldn't allow you to run.
Now they've got so many guys that are so talented, that are so young, that they want them in the sport. I mean, youth is where it's at. Moving on to another storyline. This may be a little bit difficult to follow, but try with me. A North Carolina judge will decide tomorrow whether to grant Union Bank the privileges to the BK Racing charter. Now, BK Racing originally had a charter in the NASCAR Cup Series. It sold that charter to Front Row Motorsports, and the bank, Union Bank, has filed a lawsuit against BK Racing because apparently BK Racing owes them somewhere around $8 million. Now, this charter was something that was created by NASCAR to give the team something substantial to sell when they can't run their team. So the bank is basically saying, hold on. They owe us $8 million, and they sold their charter. The only thing they have for what we loaned them money for, we want that money from the charter. So for the time being, the charter that was sold to Front Row Motorsports isn't theirs, and a bank is going to find out exactly how that's going to shake out coming tomorrow.
Well, I can see all kinds of injunctions, and I can see this taking quite a while to settle up in court. But was this isn't Martin Truex's charter?
Front Row Motorsports, not Furniture Row, which is always confusing.
Yeah, because I remember reading the article and I was thinking, wow, is this going to affect Truex? But yeah, it's not Truex, but it's Front Row, which has a couple of the Fords that Brett Moffitt had been driving one, and was Landon Castle in the other one before, or was it Reagan Smith? Or not Reagan Smith, David Reagan.
Yeah, I believe it was Landon Castle. He was in the 34.
Okay.
But yeah, the 78 team for Furniture Row does have their own charter. They own that 78, and they have sold the charter for the 77.
Well, they sold it because I just thought they were on a lease deal on that one anyway. But maybe they had bought it. I just thought it was the 1-year lease thing.
It's tough. It's tough to keep track of this.
Oh,
stuff.
it is. I mean, it's it's going every which way. I mean, like we talked before that our friends over at TriStar had picked up a charter on a lease for 1 year. So, they're guaranteed at least one starting spot. And some I consider it odd news coming out from them this week is that they picked up Jeffrey Earnhardt.
Yeah.
Is going to drive the car at Daytona. And
that's in the 00 for Starcom Racing.
Or Starcom, excuse me, not TriStar, Starcom.
So let me back you up a little bit. The 77 team did own their charter, and they have sold it to the 37 of JTG Doherty, who I believe is Chris Buescher, right?
Correct.
Okay, so that's where that charter went to.
Yep.
And then the charter basically, and I continue to fight people on Facebook about this because for some reason people hate this system, even though I don't understand why, because it really doesn't affect the product on the track. But the reason for owning a charter is a guaranteed starting position and bonus money for each race purse. So if you finish 40th and you have a charter, you're going to get more money than the guy who finished 35th and doesn't have a charter.
Well, I don't know how much the bonus money is, so I don't know if it'll jump you 5 spots, but you're definitely going to finish you're going to get more than the guy in 39th, where the purses are just going to be a couple $100 different. You're going to get more money than that for sure.
Greg Biffle joins General Tire as a spokesman in 2018. He'll be moving around from track to track and doing Facebook opportunities, fans, meet and greets, all sort of great stuff as a ambassador for General Tire. Kroger expands their Click List sponsorship with the the team of Chris Buescher in the 37 car this season, and JTG Doherty, who we just talked about, purchased their charter from the 77 team at Furniture Row. And Valvoline has extended their sponsorship with Hendrick through 2022. They're going to be a main sponsor on the 24-year-old driver of Alex Bowman and his number 88 machine.
That's kind of a switch. I mean, but Valvoline's always been good in the sport, and they're kind of they were with Roush for a while, and who else have they been with? Because they've been on several cars and with several owners, but now being over at Hendrick and having one of these young guys to help sell some T-shirts and stuff. That's going to help them, especially if and the kid's talented, and we know Hendrick's got the best of the best equipment. Yep. So if he can go out and put a win up or something, that'd be huge for Valvoline and probably get them to sign on for a lot more years or a lot more races.
So there was testing done on the track on Wednesday of this week, and it was at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. It was the first manufacturer-organized test of 2018, and it was the first opportunity that Chevy got to see what their new Camaro body style was going to do on the track. And for those of you who turned NASCAR off during the offseason and aren't really paying much attention to it, Toyota released a new body style for 2017, and Brad Keselowski threw a giant fit and said, "It's unfair, it's unfair, it's unfair." And then Chevy has released a new body style in 2018, which is the new Camaro SS, and Brad Keselowski has said, "It's unfair, it's unfair, it's unfair."
Well,
and everybody's supposed to be getting a new car in 2019. So they'll be the same body styles, but everyone's going to be reset back to even in 2019. But there's a story coming up in just a little bit where I think it's going to balance things out. Where I'm going with this is that the first opportunity that Chevy got to be on the racetrack, they posted the two fastest times, one being William Byron of Hendrick Motorsports and the other Kyle Larson of Chip Ganassi Racing. They both led, respectively, the morning session and the afternoon session, with Byron's top lap speed being 188.298 and Larson being 188.403. So Larson had the fastest overall.
Well, they also set the world on fire when they showed a picture of Ryan Newman's car.
That does look awesome.
With the number on the quarter panel, and everybody freaked out. But NASCAR has had it in the rule book for years that the number goes on the door, just as they have it in the rule book where every sponsor decal goes.
Yeah, and by the way, they have considered changing that. There was a story in the middle of last season that they were considering changing where the numbers are required because, quite frankly, the teams are asking NASCAR to put the sponsors right on the side of the door panel because they can fit more in there and get more value out of that. And the car number, honestly, isn't that important.
No, they're scored with transponders. I mean, for us in TV land, it is important. But the backup scoring, and there is one scorer for each car, and they literally tap a little red button every time their car goes across the start-finish line. And but they basically work off the roof number. And the roof number's not going anywhere. It's not going to move. It's got to be, on the roof. It's got to be X amount of inches big. Yep. It's got to be a contrasting color, all that stuff. I personally don't like the numbers in the quarter panel. I like them on the door. But if NASCAR changes the rules, you will see a lot of cars go to that. You won't see them all, and you never would, unless NASCAR dictates that it goes to the quarter panel so everything's uniform, which NASCAR may do.
So something I was talking about with this new body style for the Toyotas and the Chevys and how Ford's upset, or Brad Keselowski with his Ford is upset that those two manufacturers have an unfair advantage. NASCAR is debuting a new Hawkeye inspection system that they're going to be releasing. They're testing right now, and it's supposed to hit the track in Daytona, and it's supposed to be a very quick, very precise system for testing everything that they used to use all the molds for, and they had so many people.
Well, all the templates.
Did you see that?
They did not use molds.
Sorry, excuse me. Did you see the video I shared on Facebook on Thursday that kind of broke? It showed you video of how this whole system works.
I'd seen some other stuff on it before, but it didn't sound like it was going to come out for a year or two. But what it basically is Laser Station 2.0.
Yeah.
And now when the car goes to the laser station, it's going to do the whole body along with the chassis and the camber issues on the rear end and everything else they deal with, all done by these high digital laser quote cameras. I mean, as a former inspector, and we've talked about it before, being at the racetrack, watching them put the things on the wheels and whatnot that line up the laser inspection station, I sat there and showed you how this can be moved around, and even, a 64th of an inch is going to play out on that laser station as a big error. Until they can, come up with some of this stuff and to where they don't have to attach something to the car. And I haven't seen this new setup. We will see it in Kansas, hopefully.
I'll tell you that the video they showed, there is nothing that gets attached to the car. The car rolls into a draped area, much like we see when they roll into the garage. Instead, it'll have railings along the top. It'll be a big system, and then the drape will close, and that shoots lights on the car, and then the cameras measure how the lights reflect, and then it takes about, I think he said it takes about 30 seconds to build the image of the car, and instantly they know ride heights, they know adjustment, they know all this different stuff. And teams have been allowed over the last week to take the car down to the NASCAR R&D Center and test their body styles, test how they have their cars set up to see if they would pass or if they would fail at different tracks. So teams are being exposed to it ahead of time so that we're not running into Daytona and we're having all these issues. They're trying to work all this stuff out. Now, on the surface, it looks good. I think it looks like it's going to be a good system. It looks like it's going to be quick. And unfortunately for some NASCAR officials, it looks like it's going to be a job eliminator.
Well, and the main guy that's been running the laser inspection station is from Omaha. His name is Raymond Bartunik. And when I got into the sport back in '89 at Sunset Speedway, he was the late model inspector at Sunset. And I should maybe reach out to him. I always talk to him when we're at the track, and I know I've introduced him to you before. Yep. And always have a nice little chat with him. And I was actually here this week. I spoke, had a chance to chat a little bit with Bob Kosiski.
Yep.
And Bob said he'd talked to Raymond over the winter, and Raymond said he might not have a job, depending on how this thing comes up. And I said, well, he's still going to have a job because somebody's going to have to sit there and read the report that comes out and
may have
give a thumbs up or a thumbs down to the crew chief.
They may have a new technician that knows this system that's going to be able to do it. Unfortunately, Raymond may be veteraned out a little bit like we're seeing with some of these guys.
Yeah, but he's got the experience on pit road. I mean, when you go to the races, he's one of of the roamers behind pit road. So he's got a ton of experience. He's definitely not going to be out of a job, but his job might change.
Someone who is in a job, Starcom Racing announced earlier this week that VRX Simulators and them have teamed up to put Jeffrey Earnhardt in the 00 for the 2018 season. This will ensure that Earnhardt will continue to race in the 40th straight year of the running of the Daytona 500, and Starcom Racing says they are excited to have Jeffrey Earnhardt. We're going to try to get Jeffrey on the show for the Daytona 500 day, so we're going to try to get Jeffrey on here to talk about his getting into Starcom Racing. And great for them. They have a charter that they have purchased, and now they have a driver that is young. They also have Derek Cope that is going to be able to Derek Cope's going to be able to train Jeffrey, so a good situation for both teams.
Correct. Yeah, I think it's kind of neat that Jeffrey's going to get that ride, and it would really be neat if it turned into a full season deal, because it would be definitely on a plus, especially if he has any kind of a finish at all. If he can get a top 20 out of Daytona, it would be a big deal for the team, and if they could keep him in the car for the full season, that it'd be a lot of money. Could be a big deal for that team, and I'm sure he's going to be on a paid-for-performance contract. Right. And I do believe I was reading that Derek Cope's going to be in the 99 for them at Daytona, so they're going to try and enter 2 cars, it sounds like.
Nice.
So.
One last story before we end, and I always like to end on a high note. NASCAR's International Speedway Corporation, who owns several of the tracks that were in the NASCAR playoff system, in fact, 8 of them for the playoff weekend in September, October, and November, including Darlington, Richmond, Chicago, Chicagoland, Talladega, Kansas, Martinsville, Phoenix, and Homestead, announced they were up a total of 1% year over year for ticket sales. So the playoff system is definitely, I would think, is being a contributing factor to the increase in ticket sales year over year, although over the entire year it was down just 1.6%. So earlier in the year suffering a little bit, and then later in the year it was picking back up again.
Yep, I've owned their stock one time, and they're actually another race car based stock called it's Speedway Motors, not related to the Lincoln Speedway Motors, but a ticker symbol of TRK, and that's Bruton Smith's group that owns Vegas and Texas, etc. There's 7 or 8 tracks in that group, and I've owned that stock personally too. So
good news for them. The playoff system working out. They're able to increase ticket revenue as the season starts to wind down. All right, that's going to do it for turn number 1. We'll be back in turn number 2 to talk to Crystal Robinson about the fundraiser that she is helping to organize for Lynne Mcneal, who is the wife of hobby stock driver Jesse Mcneal throughout the Midwest. And then turns 3 and 4, the Kosiski Auto Parts Legends of the Dirt Series featuring Rick Aukland. We'll be back here on the Front Stretch.
Are you looking to book your next outing? Look no further than Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Located just north of Bass Pro Shop, Joe's Karting can handle outings of well over 100-plus people. Bachelor parties, corporate outings, team building, birthday parties, and much more. Give Buddy a call today and reserve your outing. Joe's will even work with local restaurants to cater your event. Book yours today at joeskarting.com. That's karting with a K. It's time to get to Joe's and find out what everyone already knows.
This week's Young Gun on the Front Stretch is 19-year-old Ari Scouten. Ari's the great-grandson of Leslie Vaughn, who owned dirt track cars for decades, with names like A.J. Foyt, Tiny Lund, Bobby Parker, and many more driving his cars. Ari just finished his 11th year as a dirt track driver, getting his start at the age of 8 in cage karts. In 2013, Ari upgraded to a sport mod, where he's earned top 5 points finishes at Eagle Raceway and I-80 Speedway, Most Improved Driver Awards, and 3 feature wins in 2017. When asked about his hobbies, Ari said racing, karate, racing, work, and you guessed it, racing. Someday Ari hopes to pilot a modified or even a sprint car while owning a dirt track and high-performance part fabricating company. But for 2018, you'll see him behind the wheel of his 99 RE, Drew's United Roofing, Charvette and Hurt Concrete, Brown's Trucking Sport Mod at a dirt track all over the Midwest. This week's Young Gun on the Front Stretch has been presented by Kosiski Auto Parts, 51st and I Street in Omaha, and Kosiski.com.
This is Andrew from Kosiski Auto Parts. Kosiski Auto Parts is an insurance quality quality used parts supplier that can match your foreign or domestic car or truck needs. If you have a damaged or broke down car or truck, we guarantee a clean and quality part in next day fashion. Kosiski Auto Parts, your neighborhood premium recycled parts supplier. Call any Kosiski Auto Parts salesman today by dialing 402-731-4592 or visit us at 5040 I Street in Omaha. Kosiski Auto Parts, our quality used parts will match your car or truck's needs.
We're hooked up in turn 2 and still showing the green flag on the front stretch.
Welcome back to the front stretch, heading into turn number 2, and we're joined by a special guest on the phone.
We've got Crystal Robinson, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about one of the local racers. Got some medical issues going on in the family, and they're putting a fundraiser together. Crystal, what you got going?
We've got a benefit going for Lynne Mcneal. She is the wife of hobby stock driver number 13, Jesse Mcneal, and she was diagnosed in December with triple-negative ductal carcinoma, an aggressive type of cancer, and has chemo for the next 6 months, followed by a double mastectomy. And even with the insurance, the co-pays and bills are already piling up. So we're going to have a chili feed.
That's always good. Whereabouts and what date is the chili feed going to be on?
It will be February 17th at 5 p.m. until midnight at Cozy Lounge, and that's located at 5813 North 60th Street in Omaha.
So that's basically for any of the locals. That's about 60th, just north of Hartman.
Correct.
Yep. And I know I saw on your flyer on Facebook that you got obviously the items and stuff that are going to be kind of like a silent auction raffle type combination deal going on. What are some of the things that you've got put together for us to come up there and look at?
Oh, it's been great. I-80 has donated some grandstand tickets and even pit passes. Palm Beach Tan, a month of unlimited tanning, which we could all use about now.
All of us ghosts.
Right. Dillon Brothers Harley, Holstein's Harley are getting gift baskets ready. Even the local drivers are putting together their own gift basket, and several of the area restaurants, Lansky's, Johnny Sortino's, Village Inn. It's just so many. I don't have the list here, but great items and something from everybody.
Well, I know I told you I was going to go ahead and get you a couple of my pictures that I donate to causes like this to put in there. And I know here from the radio show, we've got some things that we'd like to go ahead and donate. I'm going to dig in my supply of race-used lug nuts. I know I've got a Jimmy Johnson or two, and I think I've got a Carl Edward or two left, and if I've got an Earnhardt one, I'll bring that. And these are actually race-used lug nuts from Kansas Speedway. We'll make sure and get you guys some lug nuts over there. Dan, do we have anything in the way of maybe some autographed hero cards we could put out there for them?
Yeah, I was just rolling through the list of stuff we have left over from our prize vault, and Crystal, let's send you an autographed Bobby Pierce hero card, an autographed Chad Simpson hero card, and then from the NASCAR world, I've got Brandon Jones and John Hunter Nemechek that I can send over to you.
That's awesome.
So you guys are welcome to auction those off and try to raise some money for Lynn and her medical expenses.
Thank you. This outpouring of support from the racing family is just unbelievable. You know, I called to let her know what was going on, and she was in tears. I'm in tears, and it means the world to us.
You said this is on the 17th, which will be the day before Daytona for everybody. So the people got to control their drinking because we don't want hangovers to be affecting their partying for Daytona.
Yeah.
What kind of hours are we looking at for this event? I did see that I remember specifically that you'd put out on the flyer that children were welcome up till 9 o'clock.
Yes. We're going to try to get all the raffles done between 5 and 9. They do have karaoke for anybody that wants to stay after 9 o'clock.
Okay. And then is it going to be starting at like noon, or is it starting at 4 or 5?
No, it's going to start at 5.
Okay.
They actually have another benefit going on that day.
All right. Yeah, Cozy's good about that. I know they have benefits up there, I'm going to say almost at least monthly. They got something going on every month. So
yes, they're awesome people, very accommodating, and going out of their way to help us, bringing in extra staff. There is shuffleboard, pool table, dartboard. There's an indoor smoking area, nice, huge parking lot.
Are they having a snow garden for...
Yeah. Well, I hope not.
Yeah, that's the only bad thing about the timing is, being in the winter as opposed to being in the summer where you could, set up some type of beer garden. But, everybody's going to stay in the game.
However, if you go racing, you don't plan things like that on the weekend.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So like I said, that's the good part of it. And you're right, the racing community always comes together on these deals, and we like to get in and be a part of it getting the word out. I think we might reach, a few extra people that you might not.
Crystal, do you have an event page on Facebook that we can share?
I do, and I just learned today that it's not public, so I need to fix that.
Well, either that, or if you can, send. We've got the Front Stretch Radio Show's got a Facebook page. Go ahead and invite us over there so we can get it sent up, and so all our viewers along, if they don't happen to hear our show here this Sunday, they can see it.
Yep.
Okay,
and,
sounds great.
Might bring a few extra people.
I wasn't expecting the turnout that we're getting, and it's unbelievable. And then they're like, "Well, we can't share your page." Oh, well. You guys are lucky I even got a Facebook.
I mean, we pre-record the show, and I wasn't expecting to, be talking to you at noon on Facebook and meeting you at 2:30 at the I-80 Speedway office. So
yeah.
Things happen for a reason.
Make sure to check out the Front Stretch Facebook page. Keep an eye on it Sunday afternoon to Monday afternoon, and we'll get that page shared out. But it's an event for Lynne Mcneal, who is the wife of hobby stock driver Jesse Mcneal, again, diagnosed with an aggressive form of breast cancer just before Christmas. And you're trying to raise proceeds to pay for the medical expenses, because we all know that medical insurance is the stupidest system in the world. You pay a arm and a leg and you get nothing out of it. So unfortunately, we have to lean on our friends to help us out with these incredibly high costs. So great to put this together. We really appreciate you helping out with the community, Crystal.
Thank you. Thank you for the help.
Yeah, we're happy to help out, and we'd love to help out in any way. We'll send those items over to you again. Bobby Pierce Hero Card, Chad Simpson autographed Hero Card, Brandon Jones in the Truck Series and the Xfinity Series, and then John Hunter Nemechek, the son of Joe Nemechek, who's making away in his career too. So you'll have some established drivers, some young drivers, and we'll send you a couple of more as I get through into more items that I have on my prize vaults.
Yeah, you're probably going to be up there, I'm going to imagine, a little bit early, 4:30 or something, trying to do some setup stuff, and Kosiski's like within a mile and a half of where I live, so I'll just go ahead and make sure and bring all this stuff up for you.
That'd be great.
That Saturday.
That's awesome.
So you'll be hauling enough stuff around. You don't need to be hauling a bunch of this extra stuff around. So.
Again, you can find her on Facebook. Crystal Robinson is her name. And otherwise, if the event isn't being shared, you can head over to the Front Stretch Facebook page. We'll share it quite a few times.
And yes, for anybody that's thinking it, she is part of the Racing Robinson family from Omaha. So.
Who isn't anymore?
Well, with the last name of Robinson, anyway.
Yeah. Crystal, thanks again for doing this. Best of luck with the event, and we'll do our best to get the word out and help out Jesse and his wife Lynn on some of these medical expenses, and hopefully we can get this baby cured and get her back to the track so she can root on her husband.
Thank you.
Thanks, Crystal. We'd appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us.
Thanks a lot.
Have a good one.
Thanks, Crystal.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So again, Crystal Robinson helping us out with that. And again, the easiest way to do it, when we recorded this on Thursday evening, the Facebook event page hadn't been turned public yet, so she's going to fix that. We will share it on the Front Stretch Facebook page. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll come back at turn number 3 and turn 4. Kosiski Auto Parts Legends of the Dirt Series this weekend. Rick Aukland will join us, and he's going to talk about his career. That's coming up next on the Front Stretch.
We all have that coworker that runs their mouth off at how great they are. They shot a 5 under par, 95-mile-an-hour fastball, bench press 375, brah. Wouldn't you love to shut them up by schooling them at Joe's Karting? Council Bluffs' premier indoor karting track, professionally designed so each corner is your opportunity to embarrass your coworker. Call Buddy for your next company outing at 712-256-5278. Joe's Karting, white knuckle racing just across the river on 23rd Avenue next to AMC 17.
If you love wings, if you love rings, and all kinds of other tempting things, great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Quaker Steak and Lube is the official watering hole for the Front Stretch and the best place to catch all the NASCAR action today. Open at 11 a.m. with delivery available to Council Bluffs.
Great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Feather the brake and get back to the gas. Dan and Dirk are headed into turn 3 on the Front Stretch.
This is Jack the Gasman Dover, and you're listening to the Front Stretch.
Welcome back to the front stretch, heading into turn number 3, and it's time to have our Kosiski Auto Parts Legends of the Dirt Series conversation. A guy who has won the North-South 100, the Show Me 100, and quite a few other big prestigious races, as well as over 450 features and counting. And I say and counting because he still hasn't figured out that retirement deal quite yet. Talking with Rick Aukland. How you doing, sir?
Real good. Glad to be on here with you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Really do appreciate you taking the time out of your day, and we look forward to talking to you about your career. So let's kick things off like we've always done with the Legends of the Dirt series, and we simply start things off by figuring out how it all got started for you. Was this something that your dad did and you got exposed to it? Was it a grandparent? Was just something you did on a Friday, Saturday night, and you grew into the seat eventually?
No, my dad raced, and so did my dad's cousin up in the Glendon, Minnesota area. And I think my dad, he was a tri-state champion in about 1964 was his last year. And I can remember at the age of about 4 or 5 riding on the maintainer and honking the horn, waving at the crowd. So I've been going since I was just a toddler.
Do you think there was anything else set in your path? I mean, could you have been an engineer or a teacher or full-time military? Was there anything else in your path other than dirt racing?
Well, that's hard to answer. You know, when you're around it so much, it kind of gets in your blood and you take off and run with it. I'm sure in different circumstances, you know, you might have gotten interested in something else, but that didn't happen. That didn't happen to me.
At what age did you get to sit behind the wheel for the first time?
I didn't start till I was 22, actually driving.
Wow, really?
I traveled with with a good friend of mine, Bob Sagan, from up in Fargo there, and went racing with him while he drove. And then that's actually my first car was his year-old car, and that's how I got started with my own car.
And so you were crewing for him?
Yep.
Crew chief, just one of the main guys? Did you have an official title?
No, we didn't really have a title. It was just him and me back then. You know, two of us, we'd jump in the tow rig with I think sometimes we pulled with his vehicle and sometimes with mine, and just an open trailer, and away we went.
No, so he was the driver, so you were the 90% man. You did 90% of the work, but he took all the credit.
No, I won't go that way. Actually, it was a learning curve for me. He had raced a lot longer than me and had been involved. In fact, he owned cars when he was 14, and he wasn't old enough to race. He had hired drivers, so he was a good mechanic.
And you ran around with him for a little while. What was the story behind you finally getting your first ride?
I just decided to do it myself. You know, it was in my blood from being with my dad racing when I was real young, and I just decided to buy one and put it together and see how it went. And we had pretty good success right from the start. So I just stayed at it for all these years.
And forgive me if I missed it, if you said it before. What was that first car?
The first car I had was built by Bobby Sagan. It was we called them hobby stocks in those days. I ran a year of that and then moved to late model the following year.
So it didn't take you long to get up into the late model class then?
No, a little over a year. I think the next year we went about 3-4 weeks and just decided to I think the weight limit was like 400 pounds heavier, and I had so much lead on the car at that stage that the springs didn't even work right. So we took all the lead off and went late model, just like the fourth week of the summer. Been in late model ever since, I guess.
And you've dabbled around a little bit more. We were talking a little bit off the air, and you've played around in other vehicles since then.
Well, yeah, our top class changed there in Fargo at my home track, and we jumped in some wing sprint car stuff. Most of that was Wysota 360 sprints, although we did put a 410 and run with the World Outlaws a couple times when they came to our area. And then I had a modified most of the years. Kind of ran 2 classes, a late model and a mod, and other than about 3-4 years there when we ran the sprint cars. And that's what I still dabble in today. I have a late model, but I only raced it once last year, and I probably run a dozen, 15 shows or something like that a summer with the modified.
So have you actually ever been a full-time racer, or have you always had a career that you're doing to pay all these bills?
No, I was a full-time racer, and we kind of quit that in the early 2000s. Handwriting was on the wall that you better have a pretty good sponsor, and I don't know, a late model today, I think probably $70,000 to $100,000 if you bought it all new with motors and stuff, and pretty hard to make a living unless you got some strong backing these days.
Yeah, that's. Anything costing you that much money is going to take a lot of good support, and it's a shame that that's kind of the benchmark for. You would say nationally touring, or would that be regional touring?
I toured regionally for a while and nationally for a while. I don't remember what years exactly we started. I think we nationally toured from about 96 to maybe 04, 05, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
About 10 years there.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to Bob Pierce Sr. recently, and he threw out the number of between 400 and 500,000 to run a year. And like he said that they got lucky and won a couple $100,000 races, 3 of them in 1 year. So he goes, obviously that put them in the black. But he goes, they're just always hoping to break even.
Yeah, there used to be more owner-operator teams, and mostly now, you drive for somebody that, it really takes a good teamwork, and it always did. If you're going to spend full-time racing and keeping it running and working on them and trying to make it fast and stay up with things, you don't usually have time for a full-time business that's lucrative enough to finance it. So it's kind of a teamwork situation where somebody's an owner and somebody's been working on race cars to understand them all these years, and then a driver with that, so it really takes a good solid team anymore to get it done. Or it always kind of did.
So you got started at 22, so that would have been, what, in the early 80s somewhere?
78.
78, okay.
Yep.
Little older than me.
I was born in 56. Yeah. Born in 56, so I'm getting to be an old-timer.
When did you kind of start doing the touring stuff and start really heading out and hitting the road to the big money?
Well, I dabbled in it early. I think in the early 80s, we traveled a little regionally, and then we started there for a few years where we'd take a trip to East Bay and run the Florida Series and then head back up north and then race in that area. It wasn't until I drove for Curtis Equipment out of Tennessee, Lenoir City, Tennessee, over by Knoxville in about 95 or 6 that I started hitting the national touring scene there, about 95 or 6, something like that. And then we had our best year in 97. I was driver of the year in 97 nationally.
And that was back then. Was that the Hava Tampa series that was the big national series?
Yeah, we run a lot of Hava Tampa. I didn't run them strictly, though. They also had the Stars organization over east and kind of from Hagerstown, Maryland, and Ohio, Indiana, down in here. And we'd run some of each wherever the specials, along with UMP. We'd sometimes cut off and run the whole UMP Summer Nationals and then the shows at Eldora, plus the Show Me and this and that. And we just kind of hit specials wherever they were. Cedar Lake, Wisconsin, USA Nationals, and some of that.
Because I know, I think my first time that I actually got to see you run was at I-80 Speedway, and that was in the mid-'90s somewhere. You won the first big national touring show at the track.
I think it's the only time I ever been there, and I remember it was over 100 degrees that day, and we had a black hauler and 2 roof airs wouldn't keep up. It was so hot. I think it was a Summer Nationals race. I think we were running they had 2 series there, the Summer Nationals and the Outlaw Nationals, I believe, and it was one of them, I believe, that we went to I-80.
Yeah, that sounds about typical for I-80. It's very little breeze, down in a little bit of a hole. I don't know what it was designed like back then, but this year's, the Silver Dollar Nationals lands right in that time when it's the dang hottest time of the year.
Yeah, it was very hot. I think 106, something like that day. It was hot.
But would 95 be about right for that, or 96?
Yeah, it would be right, real close, one or the other there, because I was driving for Curtis Equipment, and Freddie Smith was driving for Christenberry Trucking, and Curtis and Christenberry were friends, and they both flew in for that race. I remember that day they came, and that was his hauler we were in that day. So it was one of them 2 years there.
When you got started out and you were just doing that the national touring, did you build your own equipment, or did you drive somebody's car?
No, we in those mid-'90s years, we were running Bullet chassis out of Pekin, Indiana. Ray Callahan. He's passed away since then, but he built a nice car back in the day.
And but was it under an actual owner, or were you the guy footing the bill for everything?
Well, the first year or so of traveling there, I drove for Curtis Equipment out of Tennessee, and then in about the end of 96, I think, start of 97, I run my own stuff, and then the only year I didn't after that was, I think, 98 or 99. I drove for GVS Gulf Valve Service out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. If you remember when Kerry Bradshaw was on TV, the football player advertising that 10-10, 220, 99-cent long distance calls, they sponsored that team in about that time, and I drove that for a year, and then I guess another time for a short time I drove the Rocket House car there for Mark Richards there one year, and I don't remember what year that was either, somewhere in there, around 2000, somewhere in there.
Did you always carry the number 12?
Yeah, I'll tell you how that started. My father raced number 2, and that first year of hobby stock, I had number 2 on my car, and that fourth week of the next year when I moved up to late model, I went to the track, and a good friend of mine named Don Gumke from Jamestown, North Dakota, had number 2 on his late model, so at that time they didn't want you to have 2 of the same number, so the simplest deal was to take a strip of duct tape and put a 1 in front of the 2, and I've been 12 ever since. So I started off with a 2 for my father, and it ended up to be a 12.
Yeah, I always love those stories of how people come up with their numbers, because sometimes it's a story like that where it's got a little bit of family history, but then duct tape sealed the rest of the deal for you, no pun intended.
Well, back in them days, a lot of times we put the number up right behind the front tire instead of back on the door where you see them these days. So had it been back by the rear tire, I might have been 21, but it was up by the front tire, so that strip of duct tape went behind the 2, and I ended up 12.
Do you find that number's pretty special to you now?
Oh, yes and no. There's been times I've drove some other people's car with a different number, and I think you just get a mindset or a mind block or something, but I have actually went up to the lineup to get the lineups and come back with the wrong heat. If I'm not number 12, I look for a 12 on the sheet, just out of habit, and you're driving 26 tonight. Whoops. Yeah. You're in the wrong heat, but yeah, you get so used to it. I got to remember now, this is real close to 40 years of that number 12 I've had now.
Yeah, it's funny how we become such creatures of habit.
Yeah.
Well, as long as you never walked over and climbed in the wrong car.
Well, not that I can remember. But,
Are you superstitious at all?
No, I don't think so. I chicken bones under the car, peanuts, whatever. No, I don't think so.
No green on the race helmet or race car was forbidden. No, nothing like that.
No. Back in the day when Charlie Schwartz ran his green cars, he had pretty good luck with them. I don't think anybody in our era was scared of green. Charlie went real fast with green.
See,
usually.
I think a lot of these guys that are superstitious, it's not necessarily they're superstitious before, but when they get on a run of bad luck, they'll look at any reason they can and they'll say, okay, that's the reason why I'm having a bad luck string. I'm going to change it, and then it gets better just because they have a different mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember growing up, and the green on the race car was always a big deal. You could go to Sunset Speedway, where I was at every Sunday night, and there was never a green race car, but got into the 90s and whatnot, and the Interstate Battery car came out, in the Cup Series and was green and won some championships. So, kind of turned that around.
Yeah. Well, now you see lots of green.
Let's take a quick break. We'll come back in turn number 4. We'll wrap this baby up.
All right.
We'll be back here on the front stretch.
We have all been there before. Broken car part in your hand and some snot-nosed punk behind the counter has no idea what he is talking about, but he guarantees that this part will fix your car. You pay an arm and a leg for the replacement, get it home, and sure enough, it doesn't fit your car. Now, learn from your mistake and give an experienced salesperson at Kosiski Auto Parts a call today at 402-731-4592. Kosiski Auto Parts will get you back on the road with your arms and legs still attached.
Hey, look at that. You're sitting on your couch playing Halo, Madden, or NASCAR while your friends are at Joe's Karting. Each lap is an adrenaline-filled, heart-pumping, white-knuckle experience that you can only get at the Metro's largest indoor karting track. Eco-friendly Honda engines rip you around the professionally designed road course at breakneck speeds. Can you reach the 14-second lap bracket? There's only one way to find out. Put the controller down and get to Joe's Karting, 23rd Avenue in Council Bluffs next to Quaker Steak and Lube.
It's checkers or wreckers as we enter turn 4 on the front stretch, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs.
Welcome back to the front stretch. Heading into turn number 4, brought to you by Quaker Steak and Lube, the official watering hole of the front stretch. there's a little football game going on today. And if you want to head down to Quaker Steak and Lube, you can enjoy some delicious specials as well as all the big screen action on the big screens at Quaker Steak and Lube. The matchup between, I tell you, I haven't even watched a single football game this year. Maybe caught a couple of minutes of a couple. It's the Eagles and the Patriots, right? That's who's. I'm sorry to say it.
That is who's doing it, and
that's who made it. Unfortunately,
I always like watching Tom Brady play. I don't know what the big hubbub is about him, but if he's cheating, whatever, puts on a good show. I come from the world that everyone's trying to cheat. I mean,
the guy's 40 years old. If he's cheating, he's very good at it by now, and you're not going to catch him if you haven't caught him yet.
So all the action on the big screens today. I think the game's at 5:30, so the specials start today at 4 o'clock. Great beer specials, great wing specials. As always, it's the lube tube and a compact bucket of wings. Take a couple of friends down there. You can enjoy some great wings and a lube tube of beer with domestic beer in it for a pretty good price. Head on down to Quaker Steak and Lube, the official watering hole of the front stretch.
And if you need something to argue about before you go to Quaker Steak, hit Joe's Karting and get a little few laps in over there.
I love the commercials that we play on the show for them. We've always got that one coworker that's always bragging. He could bench 350 and he could throw a football or a baseball at 95 miles an hour. And take that coworker over to Joe's Karting and put him in his place. Well, just once, it's going to feel so great. But turn number 4, rolling on to the Kosiski Auto Parts Legends of the Dirt Series. One of the last ones. I think, actually, Rick, you're going to be our last one of the year unless we're able to get one more next weekend. But I think our luck so far has ran out as far as getting the rest of these legends down.
Well, that reminds me, how well do you know Kevin Gundaker? We can't get a call back from the guy.
Can you help us out?
I just ran into Kevin at the Dome race in December there. I hadn't seen him for a long time. Him and his wife, son were all there. They've done a heck of a nice job of putting the dirt down for that indoor race at the St. Louis Dome there.
Yeah, well, I talked to him down there, too, and tried to get him set up with this. Oh, yeah, that'd be great. Gave me a business card with all his phone numbers, and I talked to Gordy, and we've got Gordy on the show. We were able to get him done and interviewed and everything, and he said, he goes, I'll try and kick him in the rear end to give you guys a call, but evidently he couldn't get his foot high enough or something. I don't know what.
I don't know. Maybe he's a busy man these days.
Well, let's take the last 10 minutes of today's show, maybe 15 minutes, depending on how long we blab for. And let's talk about some of these big wins of your career. Along with the last number I have, and it's 12 years old, so I'm pretty sure you've racked up quite a few more wins. Somewhere around 450 feature wins. Do you have an idea where you're at now?
Well, I wasn't as good at keeping track of some of that as some of these people. Mm-hmm. We didn't write them down officially a lot of years, but we actually had the number closer to 800 here. We had several years where we won. I think my best year percentage-wise was we had 34 wins out of 60 starts with 15 seconds. One year there running Tri-Can, and then we had a lot of years where we won 20 at a year, and I've been racing a long time. 40 years is a long time. So they add up, but I couldn't be exact. The number could have been 796 or 804 or 824. We rounded it up in there someplace.
If you average for 20 a year for 40 years, that'd be 800. And we had talked to Tom Hirsch recently, and that was kind of the number he threw out. So
and we had some years in the 30s. Wins too, so it's in there somewhere.
Did you typically try to run somewhere around 60, 70, maybe 80 races, or did you maybe even get up into those triple digits from years to year?
Oh, yeah, we had years where we ran over 100. Back in the day, if you went down to Florida and you ran the Georgia stuff on the way down and you ran 6 nights at East Bay and then another 3-4 at Volusia, sometimes you had close to 20 of them before you left Florida. Summer Nationals would usually entail low 20s, 20 to 23, something like that, I think, most of the time. So you had 45 races right there and just those two deals. So, yeah, we ran over 100 races a lot of times.
When you went down to Florida, did you prefer East Bay? I've never been to the track, but I have been to Volusia. Or did you prefer Volusia?
At the time, I preferred East Bay. It was a little racier back in them days. But Volusia's changed hands since then and is quite a different deal. In fact, it switched tracks. They swapped it when they built the new asphalt track, then they swapped it back to dirt and made the other one asphalt, and it switched back and forth. And in the early days of racing down there, Volusia used to tend to rubber up and get one lane where there wasn't much passing, but they've changed that around, where it's pretty racy again these days.
This show goes on the road about, 7-8 times a year?
Yeah, or something like that.
Where we broadcast from Knoxville, Iowa, Kansas, those different tracks. How the heck did you travel 100 to 100 different races and not go crazy? Or did you go crazy? Is that the inevitable problem?
Love of the sport.
I was just gonna say I'm not sure we weren't all crazy, but it was a lot of work and a lot of traveling, and I think that's one of the things that tires you out in the long run when you get later years is all those highway miles. I think it was just about 2,000 miles from Fargo, North Dakota to Tampa, Florida. I mean, it was you had to leave a couple days ahead of time. I know that. Well, we put on a lot of miles. I think the toughest deal I went through ever though was the Summer Nationals, where you raced every night. There was only a couple nights off and 23 nights. That's a grind. Your body in your race car looks pretty rough by the time you get done 3 weeks straight, every night of the week.
And now that Hell Tour is up to 28 races and 30 nights or something like that?
Is it? I haven't paid attention here lately. I haven't done that deal for a while. But I know it takes a lot of ambition.
You didn't run that last year, huh?
No, not last year. In fact, I can't even remember the last year I did run it. It was probably in the 90s. I would say it was in the 90s.
Well, I think Bobby Pierce has won it the last 3 years, I think, the actual tour part of it.
Uh-huh. Yeah, they got to work hard to run that deal. I know that.
Well, he's, 20 years old or 21 years old, so that age part helps. I know that.
Yeah, I think I got more done when I was that age than I do now.
You won some pretty prestigious races. We've touched on it a little bit. The USA National 100 in Cedar Lake, the Pepsi Avalon 100 in Portsmouth, the Show Me 100 in West Plains, and the North-South 100 in Florence. Of those, is your favorite win in that list, or is there one that's left off that list?
I don't know. There's a few over a period of time that just kind of always stick in your mind. I guess one of the first 10,000 to win race I ever won was in Moines, Iowa, and it was promoted by Billy Moyer Sr., Billy's dad, and Billy Moyer Jr. it was part of a 4th of July series. I think we ran 5 nights or a full week or something, and I remember Billy Moyer had won every night on American Racers, and the rest of us were on a Hoosier deal running Hoosiers. And he spanked us every night. And finally, the last night of the finale, I got my first 10,000 to win race there at Des Moines Fairgrounds, and so that will always stick in my mind. And Billy's dad was real nice. He sent me a real nice big wood plaque for Christmas that year with a picture of me in winner's circle, and so I'll always remember that one. And all the bigger paying ones, Cedar Lakes, USA Nationals. We got Billy on the last lap there one year and won our first one, and the second time I can't remember what year it was now, but maybe 97, I think. But
what was your largest paying race that you were able to win?
Some 40s, and I think there was one for 52,000, and I can't remember what they called that race. I don't think they have it anymore. It was at Cedar Lake.
That wouldn't
40s
be
and 50s.
Would that be the USA Nationals? The USA National?
No, that paid about 42, but I think they had another big race there for a few years, and I can't remember what they called it. I remember McDowell won one. We won one. I can't remember how many years they even had it. Getting old here.
When you win a big race like that, is there? Do you get a sense of relief a little bit? Because now, that's a nice payday to put into the racing purse, into the budget. So is there a sense of relief, or do you still feel that chase to stay ahead of the red mark that's coming on the budget?
No, there's always a sense of relief, especially if you own your own team, because now that money's in the bank. That's not in the bush. You've collected that one, and you can put that toward the bills and get ahead a little bit. And usually back in those days, those were kind of the ones that put you ahead were the bigger races. The other ones kind of got ate up on bills and motors and this and that. But when you banked a good one, 40 or so thousand, usually that would put you ahead for a little bit anyway.
With the way what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. They've kind of standardized the tire rules a little bit. I know back there in the 90s and whatnot, you guys would show up with 200 tires in a trailer, trying to figure out what you were going to run that night. But now with everybody running kind of a spec tire for their series, do you think that's been a good deal?
I would would have to think in some cases, no, one tire is not good everywhere. Dirt's different everywhere. And so sometimes, I know that everybody's on it, but it doesn't always do what people had hoped that it would do, like save money. If it's totally the wrong tire, that's when the racers are tempted to soften it and cheat. And then now the sanctioning bodies are trying to catch them. And I don't know. I always favored more of a 2 or 3 tire rule than just a 1 tire rule that's hard and you can't touch it. I guess that's coming from an open tire background also. So, back in the day, if we needed a softer or harder tire, we just bolted one on, and whatever we thought we needed, we tried to have it with us. And but times are changing, and I don't know that it's saved anybody money. It probably equals competition a little more at times, but I don't know that you save much money. You still got to buy, new ones, and sometimes even more so when they're the wrong compound. If you're running off edges, you got to have sharp edges. And so I don't know if it saves any money, but it's an attempt in the right direction maybe at times.
Later on in your career, you kind of stopped with the touring series and you started being more strategic because you're picking and choosing which one of these races you want to go to and finding those larger paying purses so that you had an opportunity to put the race budget back in the black.
Well, I kind of always did that. I never did follow a series much because then now that's kind of turned around too in the last several years because the competition is so tough and takes a little luck along with having your car really right to do well sometimes. So consequently, the series have provided provisionals in order their points, and they've figured out how expensive it is. So the top 10 or so are getting show-up money, for being in the top 10 and supporting the series. And it gives the series a list of who's going to be there when they want to sell these races to the tracks. And so I understand the whole system. So that's what keeps these guys, following Lucas or World Outlaws, whichever one they decide to follow. They get in that provisional and show-up money deal, and that's good for them. They have some guarantee that they're going to, get in the race and make some money when they get 1,000 miles away from the house.
Yeah.
They need that.
Yep.
Well, we've got two big races out here. We've got 2 Lucas Oil races at our local I-80 Speedway this summer. Any chance you're going to swing out and maybe take a shot at that 53,000 in July?
No, I don't race enough late model to be competitive anymore. I got one out there, but it's a 2013 model, and I've raced it like twice in the last 2 years. You got to be a little sharper on your game to get 53,000 out of the track these days than to race like that.
Well, the modified race pays what, 20?
I was going to say I know it's in 5 digits. I just don't remember exactly how high. They run a USMTS show in conjunction, but they used to run 2 separate shows, one on Friday and one on Saturday for the modifieds, and they both paid $3,000 to win. But Rodney Sanders down there out of Texas won that like 8 times in a row. He won it, swept both nights 4 years. So they said we got to change this up. And
now that you say that, I believe the modified race is 10 to win. Now that I think about it,
so you could haul your modified over.
Well, that's an option.
Just don't bring a black trailer
because it does get hot in July. Still, they haven't changed that part.
Yeah, I'll remember that. Well, fortunately, I do have a white one these days, so that would help.
And air conditioning, right?
Yeah, I don't run air in the trailer, but in the bus we do.
Yeah, that's a godsend. I tell you, during those summer months, that's the one thing that I'm sure if the apocalypse hit, society collapsed,